My name is Lauren Mitchell. I was 35 years old when a stranger sat across from me in a quiet cafe in River North, Chicago, and told me not to file for divorce. It was early afternoon. Rain clung to coats and umbrellas by the door, and the air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and wet pavement. Office workers spoke in low voices, laptops open, lives moving forward without interruption. Nothing about the moment looked important, but my chest tightened as if the room had subtly changed its pressure. The man introduced himself as Ethan Cole. He spoke calmly. His posture was controlled, almost careful. He wasn't angry. He wasn't nervous. He said my husband's name the way someone states a fact, not an accusation. Your husband is involved with my wife. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I felt something colder settle in my stomach. Suspicion hurts, but confirmation has weight. Ethan placed a thick envelope on the table between us. He didn't open it. He didn't push it toward me. He just let it exist, like a boundary I hadn't crossed yet. Then he said the sentence that still echoes in my head. If you move first, you lose. My hand stayed steady even though my heart wasn't. I had imagined this moment before. The confrontation, the collapse, the questions. I always thought I would react loudly. Instead, I sat still. Ethan spoke quietly, as if the cafe itself might overhear. Courts don't hear pain, he said. They hear proof. If you act on emotion, you protect the people who lied to you. If you wait, you protect yourself. He told me he had already learned that lesson the hard way. He had spoken to attorneys. He had begun documenting everything, dates, locations, routines. Not for revenge, for clarity. As he spoke, something inside me shifted. This wasn't a meeting about anger. It was a warning. I thought about my husband, Ryan Mitchell. The late nights. The phone turned face down on the counter. The way our home had grown quiet without a single argument. Ethan finally slid the envelope closer, but still didn't open it. You don't have to decide today, he said. Just promise me one thing. Don't rush. I nodded once. I didn't know it then, but that ordinary cafe, the rain, the coffee, the quiet, was the moment my life stopped spinning in confusion and started moving forward with intention. Before everything fractured, I believed my life was steady. I had been married to Ryan Mitchell for 7 years. He worked in operations for a regional logistics firm. Long hours, predictable stress, nothing glamorous. I worked remotely as a compliance editor for a publishing company, translating dense documents at our dining table while the radio murmured in the background. Our days followed patterns. Grocery shopping every Saturday morning. Takeout on Fridays. A movie on the couch where Ryan always fell asleep before the ending. We weren't dramatic people. We didn't post anniversaries online or surprise each other with trips. Our marriage was built on routine, and I mistook that for security. Ryan wasn't expressive, but he was dependable. Bills were paid on time. If something broke, he fixed it. If I needed help, he showed up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't forget responsibilities. That kind of consistency felt like safety. I told myself this was what grown-up love looked like. Looking back, I see how easily I confused quiet with loyalty. Ryan didn't talk much about his feelings, and I assumed that meant depth. He didn't share much about work, and I assumed that meant professionalism. There were no obvious warning signs then, no shouting, no distance I could clearly name. Just a calm house and a predictable life. My parents liked him. My friends said I was lucky. I agreed. I believed that the absence of conflict meant the presence of trust. I didn't know yet that a home can be silent not because it is safe, but because someone has already started leaving emotionally. The changes didn't arrive all at once. They layered themselves into our days so quietly that I didn't notice the pattern until it was complete. Ryan started coming home later. First 9 o'clock, then 10, then close to midnight. He blamed a new contract and increased pressure. His job had always demanded more during certain seasons, so I believed him. Then his phone changed. It used to rest face up on the counter. Now it stayed face down or in his pocket. When it buzzed, he checked it quickly and turned away. I told myself not to read into it. A new scent appeared in our bathroom. Not soap, not deodorant. Cologne. Ryan had never worn cologne in 7 years. When I asked, he shrugged and said someone at work had given him a sample. His clothes changed too. Better fitted shirts. New shoes. He stopped going to the old barber shop near our apartment and started visiting a salon downtown. None of it was wrong on its own. People are allowed to evolve. What unsettled me was the timing. On weekends, he began going to the gym. He left mid-morning and returned after lunch freshly showered and oddly energized. Not tired, not sore, light, happy in a way I hadn't seen directed at home in months. I tried to be supportive. I packed meals. I sent messages asking if he needed anything. His replies grew shorter. Sometimes hours passed before he responded. When he did, the words felt distant, like they were written for someone else. If you've ever felt your home grow colder without a single argument, you understand what I mean. Nothing was loud enough to confront, but everything felt wrong. At night, I lay awake listening to Ryan breathe, wondering when the shift had happened. I wasn't searching for proof yet. I was searching for reassurance. But my body already knew something my heart was trying to ignore. I kept telling myself to be patient, to trust, to not become paranoid. Still, a quiet sentence repeated in my mind, over and over. Something is wrong. The moment everything shifted happened on an ordinary weekday evening. I met a friend for dinner near the Loop, a narrow restaurant with tall windows facing the street. Traffic lights reflected against the glass. People passed by carrying umbrellas and briefcases, moving quickly, purposefully. I was halfway through a sentence when something familiar caught my eye across the street. Ryan. At first, I felt relief. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe work really had kept him late. Maybe my mind had been searching for patterns that didn't exist. Then I saw the woman sitting across from him. She had dark hair and wore a deep wine-colored coat. They leaned toward each other as they spoke, bodies angled inward in a way that shuts the rest of the world out. Ryan was smiling, not the polite smile he gave coworkers, not the tired smile he brought home. This one was open, relaxed, a version of him I hadn't seen in a long time. My chest tightened. I couldn't hear anything. It was as if the restaurant around me had gone silent. Then Ryan reached across the table and took her hand. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't hurried. It was casual, familiar. The kind of touch that doesn't ask permission because it has already been repeated many times before. I didn't stand up. I didn't confront them. My body refused to move. My friend followed my gaze and froze. She grabbed my arm and whispered that we should leave. I let her pull me away. My legs felt weak, like they no longer belonged to me. I went home alone. The apartment felt different that night. The couch, the kitchen, the photos on the wall. Everything felt staged, like a set I was standing in after the actors had already left. Ryan came home after midnight. He spoke casually, asked why I was still awake. His voice was normal. Too normal. I looked at his face and understood something painful. A person can lie calmly when the lie has already become routine. I didn't confront him. I asked a gentle question about work. He answered without hesitation and walked into the bathroom. I sat on the couch listening to the shower run and made a decision. I would not react. Not yet. Because once you see the truth, you don't get to unsee it. And I needed to be careful about what came next. From the next morning on, I lived a double life. On the outside, I was the same wife. I made coffee. I asked about his day. I said goodnight. On the inside, I was watching everything. I started small. I wrote down the time Ryan left and the time he came home. I noted weekends. I noted excuses. I didn't follow him. I didn't check his phone. I only recorded what was already visible. When he said he was working late, I drove past his office once. His car wasn't there. I told myself not to panic. One absence is not proof. When he said he was going to the gym, I casually asked which one. Later, I checked the membership online. He had signed up. He had checked in once. That was when the weight truly settled in. Knowing someone is lying without being able to prove it feels like hearing a smoke alarm with no fire in sight. You can't relax, but you can't act either. I didn't tell my friends. I was ashamed. ashamed for not seeing it sooner, afraid of saying the words out loud without evidence. Instead, I met quietly with a divorce attorney. He listened without interruption. Then he said something I didn't want to hear, but needed to understand. Suspicion isn't evidence, he said, and confrontation only teaches people how to hide better. I left his office heavier than when I arrived, but with one clear rule echoing in my mind. Do not move until you can prove. I didn't confront Ryan after that night. I didn't hint. I didn't test him. I didn't change my tone. I became careful instead. From the outside, nothing about our marriage shifted. I still packed lunches when I had time. I still asked neutral questions about his day. I still said goodnight and turned off the lamp. Inside, though, I was paying attention in a way I never had before. I started writing things down. Not emotions, not suspicions, only facts. The time he left in the morning, the time he came home, the days he claimed to be traveling, the weekends he said he needed space to focus. I wrote them in a plain notebook and hid it beneath old tax folders in a drawer he never opened. When Ryan said he was working late, I drove past his office once more. Again, his car wasn't there. I told myself the same thing I'd learned to repeat. One absence isn't proof. Patterns are. When he mentioned the gym again, I asked casually which location he preferred. Later, I checked the membership records online. He had joined months earlier. He had checked in exactly once. That was when I understood something new. Lies are rarely bold. They're lazy. I still didn't follow him. I didn't check his phone. I didn't want evidence that could be questioned later. I only observed what he offered freely. The loneliness surprised me. Sleeping beside someone who is already emotionally gone feels heavier than sleeping alone. At night, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how long Ryan had been dividing his life into compartments, one for me, one for her, believing they would never touch. I told no one, not my parents, not my friends. Saying it out loud without proof felt like betrayal of myself. That was when the doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon. I assumed it was a delivery. When I opened the door, a man stood there holding a slim folder under his arm. Early 40s, well-dressed, calm eyes that had already seen too much. He asked if I was Lauren Mitchell. We didn't talk on the doorstep. We walked to a quiet diner a few blocks away. He didn't waste time with introductions. My wife is seeing your husband. Hearing the words spoken aloud landed differently than seeing Ryan with my own eyes. The truth felt heavier. Final. His name was Ethan Cole. He told me his wife's name was Melissa Carter. The affair had been going on for months. Late nights. Work trips. The same pattern I had been living through without understanding it. Then he opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Ryan and Melissa walking into restaurants together. Standing close in parking garages. Entering a movie theater side by side. Each image was labeled with a date and location. Clean. Precise. I recognized her immediately. Ethan explained that after his suspicions became impossible to ignore, he hired a professional. Not to confront. To document. No emotion. Just records. I felt two things at once. Relief, because I wasn't imagining it. Grief, because it was real. Ethan slid a flash drive across the table. You'll need this if you decide to protect yourself, he said. I asked him why he was helping me. Because we're in the same position, he replied. And no one should go through this blind. As we stood to leave, he paused. I'll reach out again, he said. There's something important we need to discuss. I watched him walk away, the folder tucked under his arm, and understood something quietly but clearly. This was no longer about discovering the truth. It was about what I chose to do with it. Ethan called 3 days later. His voice was steady, but more deliberate than before. He asked if I could meet him again, same cafe in River North. He didn't explain why. He didn't need to. By then, I understood that when someone speaks carefully, it's because the stakes are high. He was already seated when I arrived. He didn't stand. He waited until I sat down across from him before reaching under the table and lifting a hard black case onto the empty chair beside him. The sound it made when it touched the floor was dull and heavy. He didn't open it right away. Before I show you this, Ethan said, you need to understand something. This isn't about revenge. It's about timing. Then he opened the case. Inside were stacks of cash, neatly bound. I didn't need to count it to know it was a significant amount. My breath caught despite myself, not because of greed, but because of what it represented. Intention. I'm asking you not to file for divorce yet, he said. The anger came quickly, sharp and immediate. I told him I wasn't for sale, that whatever this was, it felt wrong. Ethan nodded as if he expected that response. I know, he said. That's why this isn't a bribe. It's compensation for endurance. He explained slowly, choosing each word with care. If I filed now, Ryan would panic. Panic would reach Melissa. They would cut contact, destroy evidence, rewrite their story. What looked clear today would become unclear in court. Waiting would do the opposite. Patterns would deepen. Excuses would become habits. Evidence would multiply without effort. Ethan told me he planned to wait 3 more months. During that time, he would continue documenting everything legally and carefully. He asked only one thing of me. Don't move first. No emotional messages. No confrontations. No sudden changes. Only normal behavior and shared information that already existed. I asked him why he needed me specifically. Because if you move first, he said, your husband will warn my wife, and everything I've built will collapse. The weight of it settled in my chest. Our situations weren't separate. They were connected. One wrong move from either of us would protect the people who had betrayed us. 3 months felt unbearable. Living in the same house. Acting normal. Carrying knowledge that had nowhere to go. Ethan closed the case and slid it toward me. This doesn't buy your silence, he said. It buys you space. Time to think clearly instead of reacting from pain. I didn't touch it right away. I thought about the nights I lay awake listening to Ryan breathe. About the way lies had quietly taken residence in my home. About how anger would feel satisfying for a moment and expensive forever. Finally, I nodded. I agreed to wait, not because of the money, but because I wanted to end this the right way. With proof instead of rage. With dignity instead of chaos. I carried the case home that afternoon. It was heavier than I expected, not because of what was inside it, but because of the decision it represented. From that day on, waiting was no longer passive. It was strategy. The weeks that followed required a discipline I didn't know I had. Nothing about my routine changed. I still made breakfast. I still asked neutral questions. I still wished Ryan a good day. From the outside, our marriage looked intact. Inside, I was documenting. Ethan and I agreed on strict rules. No emotional messages. No opinions. Only facts. Dates. Times. Locations. If something couldn't be verified, it wasn't shared. When Ryan said he had late meetings, Ethan quietly confirmed Melissa left her office at the same time. When Ryan claimed business travel, Ethan checked flight records. Patterns began to overlap too perfectly to be coincidence. I found the condo lease by accident while searching for a utility bill. Evanston. 2 bedrooms. Ryan was the sole signer. The start date was weeks earlier than his first excuse about work stress. I photographed every page and put it back exactly where it belonged. Ethan told me I'd done the right thing. Evidence only matters when it's clean. No scenes. No accusations. No digital footprints that could be questioned. We treated it like an audit. Every overnight stay logged. Every shared location recorded. Every coincidence stripped of deniability. Ryan grew more relaxed at home. His guard lowered. He believed he had successfully divided his life into compartments. That's the mistake people make when they lie long enough. They start believing they're in control. One evening, he mentioned a short business trip to Florida. Tampa. 3 days. I smiled and wished him a safe flight. Ethan confirmed Melissa booked the same dates. That was when I stopped waiting for proof. I started organizing it. Ryan came back from Florida careless and light. He brought a small gift from the airport and said the meetings had been exhausting. I thanked him and placed the box on the counter. My face didn't change. Inside, I already knew where he'd stayed and who had slept beside him. A week later, he floated a new idea. The commute was draining him. Maybe it made sense to rent a small place closer to work during the week. He said it carefully, watching my reaction. I nodded and told him to do what he thought was best. That decision ended everything. Ethan confirmed Melissa moved into the same condo. Parking logs showed both cars overnight. Utility accounts were activated. Grocery purchases appeared on shared days. They weren't sneaking anymore. They were living together. Cohabitation removes excuses. It removes confusion. It turns a story into a fact. We chose a Monday morning. 10 a.m. Both attorneys ready. Both cases filed within minutes of each other. No warning. No confrontation. By Wednesday, the papers were served. Ryan came home holding stamped documents, his hands shaking. His voice was loud, but his eyes were empty. I told him calmly that I knew everything. The photos, the lease, the trip, the life he built while pretending ours was intact. When I told him Melissa's husband had filed the same day, his face collapsed. That night, the house was silent. Not the quiet of avoidance, the quiet of exposure. For the first time in months, the truth had nowhere left to hide. And I finally slept. Looking back, there are things I wish someone had told me sooner. Trust patterns more than promises. Do not confront when you are confused. Confront when you are prepared. Protect your finances, your documents, and your peace quietly and early. Silence is not weakness when it is intentional. Waiting does not mean accepting. It means choosing the moment that protects you. This story was never about revenge. It was about self-respect, supported by evidence. I didn't win because I waited. I won because I waited with purpose. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who may need to hear that patience can be powerful. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Would you confront immediately, or would you collect proof first? Subscribe to Faye Revenge Stories for more stories about quiet strength, real consequences, and starting over with clarity. Your silence can be power when you choose it wisely.